Unaware his wife had just inherited a $10 billion empire, he abandoned her and their triplets by the roadside, then deliberately splashed mud on her. What happens next will shock you. He didn't just abandon her once. He'd been disappearing from her for years in small, quiet ways no one thought mattered. He abandoned her in the cruelest way possible, not behind closed doors, not with words whispered in anger, but on the side of a dark road with their 3 children watching. By the time the courtroom went silent, by the time the judge reviewed the footage, granted full custody, and approved the filings that would dismantle his life piece by piece, Daniel Carter still didn't fully understand what he had done, because long before the court, long before the lawyers, long before the public collapse, he made his most wicked decision in a moving car, on a night he thought would end like any other argument. That night, Daniel pulled over suddenly not far from a small 24-hour gas station whose flickering security cameras he never even noticed. He accused his wife Evelyn of being useless. He called her dead weight. He said the children deserved better than her. Then his phone rang. He answered it on speaker. A woman laughed on the other end. Silence swallowed the car. Minutes later, Daniel shoved a suitcase onto the roadside, ordered Evelyn and their 10-year-old triplets out, and climbed back into the driver's seat. But abandonment wasn't enough for him. As Evelyn stood there stunned, holding her children close, as the kids tried to understand why their father wasn't coming back, Daniel sped away. And just before disappearing into the dark, he swerved deliberately into a deep roadside puddle near the gas station entrance. Mud and dirty water exploded upward, soaking Evelyn from head to toe, splashing across the children's clothes, their faces, their silence. That moment was not an accident. It was chosen. What Daniel didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, was that, just hours earlier, Evelyn had quietly signed the final documents confirming her full control of a self-made business empire, now formally transferred to her name through an inheritance structure worth $10 billion. He thought she was dependent. He thought humiliation was power. He thought cruelty was free. While mud dried on her clothes and fear settled in her children's eyes, Evelyn learned something far more dangerous than anger. She learned how exposed he really was. What followed wasn't screaming, wasn't chaos, wasn't revenge the way he imagined. It was evidence, documents. Time-stamped footage from the very place he had left her, court filings, and when the truth finally surfaced, it didn't just shock him, it buried him. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting her silence be mistaken for weakness again. When you subscribe, you stand with every woman who was humiliated and underestimated, every child protected by courage, and every quiet mind that chose strategy over despair. The screen opens on silence so heavy it almost feels dangerous. Evelyn Carter sat completely still at a small wooden desk in the corner of a modest rented home. The walls were thin. The furniture was simple. Nothing in the room suggested wealth. The only light came from a desk lamp with a flickering bulb. Its glow revealed a cracked laptop screen filled with numbers, rows of financial dashboards, international transfers, logistics maps, and silent alerts ticking upward. No shopping sites, no social media, no distractions, just control. Evelyn was 36 years old. To the neighbors, she was a tired wife and a stay-at-home mother. To her children, she was safety. To her husband, she was almost invisible. And to a network of companies spread quietly across borders, she was the final authority. She leaned forward, eyes sharp but calm, fingers moving with practiced ease. Every number made sense to her, every decision was measured. This wasn't a hobby. It was a system she had built long before anyone called her Mrs. Carter. A small notification blinked at the corner of the screen. Transfer documents received, pending court validation. Evelyn reviewed one last line, then entered a secure confirmation code. When the final alert settled and the status changed to submitted, she exhaled slowly, as if releasing a breath she had been holding for years. She closed the browser tab and minimized the dashboard, leaving only the cracked desktop behind. Beneath the desk was a locked drawer. Evelyn reached down and opened it with a small key she wore on a thin chain under her shirt. Inside were 3 things: a second phone unmarked, always silent unless it mattered; a stack of legal documents under a different last name, Evelyn Hale; and a simple gold ring, worn thin, engraved on the inside with 4 words, built, not inherited. The irony wasn't lost on her. The lawyers would call what she was about to receive an inheritance, but she knew every dollar had been built in years no one else had stayed up for. She touched the ring with her thumb, just once. Long before Evelyn became a wife, she had already built an empire. She had learned early that power survived longer when it stayed quiet and when it was shielded behind trusts, holding companies, and signatures no one else in the house bothered to ask about. The story of that power did not begin in comfort. Years ago, Evelyn had been a young woman sleeping in her car between warehouse shifts. She taught herself logistics by watching freight schedules. She learned coding through free online forums late at night, sitting in parking lots, using borrowed internet. She studied finance by reading discarded textbooks and asking questions no one wanted to answer. When her first company finally took shape, it wasn't glamorous. It solved one small supply chain problem others ignored, then another, then 10 more. She sold it quietly, took no interviews, and vanished before anyone could attach a face to the success. Her second venture was larger, smarter, hidden behind holding companies and silent partners. It scaled internationally, piece by piece, never drawing attention. Evelyn made sure of that. She watched powerful men boast, marry, and then lose everything: love, family, trust, because money changed how people looked at them. She promised herself she would never let that happen. When she met Daniel Carter, she never told him the full truth. Daniel was 39 then, ambitious, charming, and quietly insecure in ways he didn't yet understand. He worked in middle management and spoke often about potential and big breaks. Evelyn liked that he laughed easily. She liked that he didn't ask too many questions about her past, only enough to feel satisfied. Before they married, she insisted on a small, boring prenuptial agreement. She framed it as protection from old business complications under my maiden name, Hale. Daniel signed quickly, grateful she wasn't asking for anything from him. He never asked what, exactly, she was protecting. She chose love over exposure, silence over pride. And when they married, she locked Evelyn Hale away in paperwork and encrypted accounts. Now, years later, their triplets, Lucas, Noah, and Emma, were asleep in the next room. All three were 10 years old, born minutes apart. They were old enough to sense tension, old enough to notice silence, but still young enough to believe their mother could fix anything. Evelyn stood quietly and walked to their doorway. She watched them sleep, her expression softening. This was the part of her life she never regretted. Not once. Behind her, a door creaked. Daniel leaned against the hallway wall, phone in hand. His tie was loose. His face carried the familiar mix of irritation and distraction. "Why are you always awake?" he said, not unkindly, but not caring either. "You're always tired, Evelyn, and you don't even work." The words landed harder than he realized, only because they landed on the very night she had just confirmed paperwork that would quietly move a $10 billion structure fully into her control. Evelyn turned slowly to face him. She studied his posture, the way his eyes never lingered on her long enough to truly see her. She thought of the contract she had signed that week, the system she kept running, the lives her decisions quietly supported. She said nothing. Daniel scoffed lightly, already distracted by a message on his phone, and walked away toward their bedroom. Evelyn returned to the desk. She closed the cracked laptop carefully. The screen went dark, reflecting her face calm, unreadable, steady. She slid the drawer shut and locked it. Somewhere on the second phone, out of sight, a new message appeared from a contact labeled Hale Trust, Legal. She didn't open it yet. In the silence that followed, one truth hung in the air, unseen and unspoken. Daniel believed his wife was weak, and very soon that belief would cost him everything. The morning did not begin gently. It began with noise, movement, and pressure, life pressing forward whether anyone was ready or not. Evelyn was already awake when the alarm rang. She moved through the kitchen with practiced urgency, packing lunches with one hand while flipping through homework pages with the other. 3 lunchboxes sat in a neat row on the counter, each labeled in careful handwriting, Lucas, Noah, Emma. The triplets, 10 years old, each different in ways that had nothing to do with minutes shuffled into the kitchen. Lucas, the oldest by birth order, was serious and observant. Noah was restless, always tapping his foot. Emma noticed everything but said little. Evelyn knelt to tie Noah's shoelaces, tightening the knot just enough so it wouldn't come undone. "Don't forget your math quiz," she said softly. "I won't," Noah replied. though his eyes flicked toward the hallway. Daniel Carter stood there, leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone. His suit was pressed, his watch expensive, but his expression carried a constant edge of dissatisfaction that no new tie or promotion ever seemed to soften. He barely looked up. "Why is the kitchen always a mess in the morning?" he muttered, though nothing was out of place. Evelyn didn't answer. She never did when the comments were designed to land, not to start a conversation. She moved to Emma, smoothing her hair and adjusting the strap of her backpack. "You okay today?" Evelyn asked. Emma nodded, then hesitated. "Yes," she said quietly. Daniel sighed loudly, finally putting his phone down. "You know," he said, "other families manage mornings without all this chaos." Evelyn paused, just for a moment. She believed love was shown in consistency. Daniel believed love was shown in convenience. The thought settled heavily in the air. As the kids gathered their bags, Evelyn handed Daniel his coffee. He took it without thanks, already distracted by another message lighting up his screen. The glow reflected in his eyes. A brief, private smile crossed his face before disappearing just as quickly. Evelyn noticed. She always noticed. As the door closed behind the children, the house fell into a quieter rhythm. Daniel adjusted his tie and glanced around. "You should think about doing something with your time," he said casually. "I mean, you're home all day." Evelyn nodded once. She did not remind him of the speaking invitations she had declined under her maiden name, the board meetings she had stepped away from, the long encrypted calls she took in silence after the children slept, under the name Hale that he never bothered to understand. A memory surfaced uninvited. A flashback of Evelyn standing alone in a quiet hallway years ago, phone pressed to her ear, listening to an assistant say, "They're asking if you'll take the role publicly, Miss Hale," and Evelyn answering, "No, not now. I've just gotten married." Another memory followed. Lucas struggling with reading. Emma crying at night, afraid she was too slow. Noah getting into fights because he couldn't explain himself. Evelyn chose to stay home with them. She always chose them over visibility. Daniel grabbed his jacket from the chair. As he lifted it, Evelyn caught a scent that didn't belong to the house. Light, floral, expensive, perfume. Her eyes flicked to the collar. The fabric was clean, carefully cleaned. She said nothing. Daniel caught her look and smirked before she spoke. "You're imagining things," he said. "You worry too much." He laughed lightly, as if it were a joke. Then, as he headed toward the door, he added, "You know, I see women online all the time, rich women who don't even understand their place. Money ruins them." The words landed sharp and careless. He had no idea he was talking to one. Evelyn watched him leave. The door shut. Silence returned. Later that afternoon, Evelyn sat at the dining table helping the kids with homework. Lucas read aloud, stumbling over a word. Evelyn waited patiently. "You're doing fine," she said. "Take your time." From the hallway, Daniel's voice echoed as he walked in, laughing into his phone. His tone was lighter than Evelyn had heard in months. The call ended quickly when he noticed them watching. "Who was that?" Noah asked innocently. Daniel shrugged. "Work." Emma looked at her mother. Her eyes lingered on Daniel's phone, still glowing faintly in his hand. Dinner passed with forced normalcy. Daniel complained about expenses, about being underappreciated at work, about how tired he was. Evelyn listened. She always listened. After the kids went to their rooms, Emma returned quietly and stood beside Evelyn at the sink. "Mom?" she whispered. Evelyn turned. Emma leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "Why does Dad smile at his phone like that, but never at you anymore?" Evelyn's hands froze in the water. She didn't turn around right away. The question hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Somewhere in the house, Daniel's phone buzzed again. And this time, Evelyn did not look away. The laugh was wrong. It was too loud, too free, and it didn't belong to the man who came home every night irritated and distant. Daniel Carter leaned back in his office chair, head tilted slightly, his phone resting against his ear as he laughed again, easy, careless, alive. Around him, the office buzzed with low conversation and the clicking of keyboards. Daniel worked in a corporate department where everyone pretended to be busy and quietly competed for attention. He liked being noticed here. It made him feel important in ways home no longer did. A woman stood beside his desk. She was well-dressed, confident, and familiar with his space in a way that didn't feel strictly professional. She reached out and touched his arm lightly as she said something that made him smile again. Her fingers stayed there a second longer than necessary. Daniel didn't move away. He didn't look surprised either. The woman's face was never fully shown. Only her presence mattered, the ease between them, the way Daniel leaned toward her, the way his voice softened when he spoke back. "Later," he said quietly, lowering his voice. "I'll call you when I'm out of the house." She nodded, already smiling, and walked away. Daniel watched her leave, then glanced around quickly, as if checking whether anyone had noticed. Satisfied, he returned to his screen, his mood lighter than it had been in months. At home, the washing machine hummed steadily. Evelyn stood in the laundry room, folding clean clothes with slow, careful movements. Each item was folded neatly, placed into separate piles, one for each child, one for Daniel, one for herself. Daniel's phone lay on the counter beside her. He had left it there in his rush that morning, trusting she would charge it like she always did. Evelyn did not pick it up. She had learned long before marriage that truth always revealed itself when you stopped chasing it and let it run out of places to hide. The phone vibrated. Once. Then again. The screen lit up. Evelyn glanced down without touching it. A message preview appeared across the screen. "I can't keep pretending you're unhappy." Her breath caught, just slightly. She read the sentence again, letting it settle. There was no full name, no photo, just an initial where a contact name should be. Evelyn looked away. She folded the last shirt and placed it carefully on the pile. Her hands were steady, her face showed nothing. In her mind, patterns began to form. Daniel's irritation at home, the sudden complaints about money, the unfamiliar perfume, the smiles he no longer shared with her but saved for someone else. She had seen this before, not in her own life, but in the lives of powerful men she had once worked alongside as Evelyn Hale. Men who believed they deserved admiration simply for existing. Men who grew restless when their reflection stopped praising them. Evelyn wiped her hands on a towel and pushed the phone slightly farther away. She did not open the message. Not yet. That night, Daniel came home late. He dropped his keys louder than necessary, as if announcing his presence. Evelyn sat on the couch, helping Emma with a school project. The children looked up when Daniel walked in. "Hey," he said, distracted, already loosening his tie. He kissed Emma's head absently, then disappeared into the bedroom with his phone still in his hand. Evelyn watched him go. Later, when the house was quiet and the children asleep, Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, typing quickly on his phone. He turned slightly away, angling the screen from view. Evelyn lay beside him, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She didn't ask who he was talking to. She didn't need to. A flash of memory surfaced years ago. Evelyn sitting across from an older businesswoman during a private meeting under non-disclosure agreements. The woman had said, "When a man starts lying to himself, the lies spill everywhere. Your job is not to chase them. Your job is to wait." Evelyn had remembered that advice ever since. The phone buzzed again. Daniel smiled. Evelyn noticed. The next day, Daniel left early, unusually cheerful. In his rush, he forgot his phone again. This time, Evelyn picked it up. She didn't unlock it. She didn't scroll. She didn't invade. She simply looked at the notifications stacking on the lock screen. Messages, missed calls, the same initial, the same tone. Her heart didn't race. It slowed. Evelyn placed the phone back exactly where she found it. She walked to the window and watched Daniel's car disappear down the street. In the quiet that followed, a single question echoed in her mind, steady and sharp. How long had this been happening? Somewhere far from the house, a woman laughed softly into her own phone, unaware that her shadow had just crossed the wrong life. And somewhere very close, Evelyn began to count not days, not weeks, but patterns. Because the next time Daniel left, he wouldn't be leaving with only his secrets. He would be leaving with consequences. Hours after another tense, brittle dinner at home, Daniel had insisted they all go for a drive and clear the air. The kids climbed into the car, because that's what you do when a parent says it's time to go. The car swerved hard to the left, tires screaming against the road. Evelyn's hands shot out instinctively, gripping the door handle as the vehicle jolted forward again. In the back seat, the triplets lurched in their seatbelts, bodies snapping back into place. No one screamed. The silence was worse. Daniel drove like he was chasing something he couldn't outrun or trying to prove something to a woman who wasn't even in the car. His jaw was tight, his knuckles were white around the steering wheel. Outside, the night pressed against the windows. They were on a stretch of road just outside the city, where a lone 24-hour gas station and mini-mart glowed in the distance, its neon sign buzzing. Daniel sped past its entrance without slowing. No music, no small talk, just the sound of the engine and the children's shallow breathing. Lucas sat stiffly in the middle, eyes fixed on the back of his father's seat. Noah stared out the window, counting streetlights to calm himself. Emma clutched her backpack in her lap, fingers curled so tight her hands hurt. Evelyn turned slightly in her seat. "Daniel," she said carefully, her voice steady but low. "You're driving too fast." He didn't look at her. "You always say that," he snapped. "Everything I do is wrong to you. That's not what You don't do anything." He cut in, anger spilling out now. "You sit at home, you slow everything down. I'm wasting my life trying to carry all of you." The words landed like blunt force. Evelyn felt the air leave her chest, but she didn't react. She glanced at the children in the mirror. Lucas's jaw tightened. Emma looked down. "Please," Evelyn said quietly. "Not in front of them." Daniel laughed once, short, bitter. "They deserve honesty," he said. "They deserve better energy than this, than you." The road stretched ahead, empty and dark except for the faint glow of the gas station they had just passed. For a moment, it seemed like the argument might fade into silence. Then Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and answered. He didn't turn off the speaker. A woman's voice spilled into the car light, amused, intimate. "Did I call at a bad time?" She laughed. "You disappeared so fast." The sound of her voice filled the space between them. The children froze. Evelyn didn't move. She didn't speak. She didn't breathe. Daniel realized too late. He fumbled with the phone, swore under his breath, and ended the call. The damage was already done. Noah shifted uncomfortably. Emma's eyes darted between her parents. "Who was that?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniel slammed his hand against the steering wheel. "That's it," he said sharply. "I'm done." Up ahead, a side road curved off near the gas station's side entrance. Security cameras sat high on poles, red lights blinking lazily, details Daniel never noticed. He pulled the car over without warning. Gravel and loose asphalt crunched loudly beneath the tires as the car skidded to a stop at the edge of the lot, just inside the camera's view. Evelyn turned to him fully now. "Daniel," she said, her voice still calm, though her heart was pounding. "This isn't the time. Let's go home. We can talk." "There is no home," he snapped. "Not with you." He jumped out of the car and yanked open the trunk. The night air rushed in, cold and sharp. He grabbed a suitcase and threw it onto the ground at Evelyn's feet. "Get out," he said. "All of you." The children stared at him in disbelief. "Dad?" Emma whispered. Daniel didn't look at her. Evelyn stepped out of the car slowly, placing herself between him and the children. "Daniel, stop," she said. "They're scared." "This isn't who you are," he scoffed. "You don't know who I am anymore," he said, "and I don't want this life." She tried one last time. "We can fix this," she said quietly. "For them." Daniel slammed the trunk shut. "I'm choosing myself," he said, like a line he had rehearsed. Evelyn turned back to the children. "Stay close to me," she said softly. Daniel got back into the car without another word. The engine roared to life. For a brief second, it seemed like he might hesitate, like he might look back at their faces framed in the harsh parking lot light. He didn't. As the car sped away, Daniel swerved deliberately toward a deep puddle at the edge of the road where the gas station's runoff collected. Water and mud exploded upward, drenching Evelyn and the children in a cold, filthy wave. The force knocked Emma backward. Noah gasped. Lucas clenched his fists, too stunned to move. On the gas station building, a security camera caught everything. The stop, the suitcase, the children, the splash. Another camera above the pumps captured the angle of his license plate as he drove off. The car disappeared into the night. Silence rushed in behind it. Mud dripped from Evelyn's hair, her coat, her hands. She stood there, soaked and shaking, her arms instinctively wrapping around the children. Cruelty didn't need anger. Sometimes it just needed permission. The road was almost empty. Distant headlights passed far away on the main highway. The gas station windows glowed, but no one stepped outside yet. Emma's lip trembled. "Mom," Lucas said slowly, his voice breaking as he looked up at her. Are we homeless now?" Evelyn looked down at her children, their faces streaked with mud and fear under the buzzing security lights. She opened her mouth to answer. And somewhere deep in her bag, the second phone began to vibrate softly once, then again. She didn't reach for it yet. First, she tightened her grip on her children, because the night wasn't finished with her. Not yet. The bathroom door of the gas station slammed shut behind them. Evelyn locked it with shaking hands, then leaned her back against the cold metal door, as if it were the only thing holding the world together. The fluorescent lights above flickered harshly, humming like they might go out at any moment. After Daniel's car had vanished, she had made 3 choices in quick succession. Hold the children, grab the suitcase, walk toward the only light she could see. The gas station wasn't far. 10 minutes on foot felt like an hour, but the path was lit enough to keep the kids moving. A tired attendant at the counter had stared for a moment at their mud-streaked clothes, then silently handed over the bathroom key without a question when Evelyn asked. Now the triplets stood in front of her, mud-streaked, silent, terrified. Lucas's jacket was soaked through. Noah's hands trembled as he tried to wipe dirt from his jeans. Emma's hair was tangled with dried mud, tears cutting clean lines down her cheeks. "Don't move," Evelyn said quickly, her voice firm but gentle. "I've got you." She turned on the sink and pulled paper towels from the dispenser, soaking them under warm water. Her movements were controlled, almost precise, too precise for someone who had just been left on the roadside. Years of crisis management in warehouses and boardrooms had taught her how to function when other people froze. She knelt in front of Emma first, wiping her face slowly. "It's cold," Emma whispered. "I know," Evelyn replied softly. "It won't be for long." She cleaned Noah next, then Lucas, working quietly, methodically. She didn't rush, she didn't panic, she didn't cry. Inside, something was hardening. A woman who had once negotiated with shipping companies in 3 time zones at once knew this feeling well. The moment when shock ended and decisions began. When the children were as clean as she could make them, she reached into her bag for spare clothes. She always kept a small emergency set for each child, leftover habit from long drives and unpredictable days. Her hand brushed against something smooth and solid at the bottom. The second phone. It vibrated. Once. Evelyn froze. The sound was soft, but it cut through the room like a blade. The children looked up at her. "Mom?" Noah asked. Evelyn swallowed. "Give me a second," she said calmly. "Just stand right here." She stepped a few feet away, turning her back slightly so the children couldn't read her face. She stared at the phone in her hand, the screen glowing with an unknown number linked to a secure contact. She hesitated, then she answered. "Yes," she said quietly. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and precise. "Miss Evelyn Hale," the man said, "we've been trying to reach you. I'm calling regarding the final court confirmation you authorized last night. The probate court has validated the transfer you submitted on your system last night," the man continued. "I'm Thomas Reed, executor of the Hale Trust. Your last remaining silent partner's estate has been settled. All entities held in his name are now officially under your control." He paused, then added, "Estimated consolidated valuation stands just above $10 billion. Evelyn's face did not change. No gasp, no tears, no smile. "The authority is yours as of this afternoon," Thomas said. "Operational control remains uninterrupted. We'll need to review security and public exposure risks." Silence stretched between them. The world believes power looks like shock, Evelyn thought. "I learned it looks like silence. I understand," she said aloud. "But tonight, my children and I are safe, and that's my priority. We'll talk about next steps tomorrow." There was a brief pause on the line. "Of course, Miss Hale," Thomas replied. His tone softened slightly. "We'll be ready when you are. I'll have our legal team on standby." The call ended. Evelyn lowered the phone and stood still for a long moment. The bathroom felt smaller now, louder. Like it couldn't contain everything she was holding inside. Mud, fear, and a $10 billion decision that no one in this gas station would ever guess. She slipped the phone back into her bag and turned toward her children. They were watching her closely. Lucas studied her face, searching for answers. Noah clutched his sleeves. Emma took a small step closer. "Mom?" Emma asked. "What happens now?" Evelyn walked toward them and knelt so she was at eye level with all three. She placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "We're going to be okay," she said. Her voice was steady, certain. Not because of the number Thomas had just confirmed, but because she had already decided they would be. Lucas blinked. "Really?" "Yes," Evelyn replied without hesitation. "Really." The children believed her. They always had. As they left the bathroom together, Evelyn handed the key back to the attendant and thanked him. He nodded awkwardly, eyes lingering on the kids. "Do you need to call someone?" he asked carefully. "I already did," Evelyn answered. It was the truth, just not the kind he imagined. Outside, the night stretched on. Unaware that something had shifted, Evelyn tightened her grip on her bag as they walked toward the road to flag a taxi to the nearest motel. Because the next time her second phone rang, it wouldn't be about survival. It would be about preparation. The motel door slammed shut with a hollow sound that echoed too loudly in the small room. Evelyn stood just inside, her chest rising and falling once, sharply, as if her body was only now realizing how close it had come to breaking. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and old carpet. A flickering lamp buzzed overhead. 3 narrow beds lined the wall. The triplets were already asleep. Lucas lay on his side, one arm stretched protectively across Noah's pillow. Noah's brow was still tight, even in sleep, like his mind refused to rest. Emma clutched her backpack against her chest, fingers curled around the strap as if afraid it might disappear. They had made it here by taxi from the gas station, the same station whose cameras had watched their humiliation in silence. The attendant had quietly dialed a cab when Evelyn, still soaked in drying mud, asked if there was a motel nearby that took cash. They were exhausted, emotionally empty. Children forced to grow up too fast in a single night. Evelyn sat slowly on the edge of the nearest bed. Her coat was draped over a chair, still faintly marked with mud. She didn't brush it off. She didn't care. For the first time since the roadside, she let her shoulders drop. The silence pressed in. At the front desk earlier, the motel clerk, a young man with tired eyes and a polite voice, had avoided asking too many questions. He took the cash, handed over the key, and looked away when he noticed the children's clothes. "Room's on the first floor," he'd said quietly. "If you need extra blankets, just call. Don't worry about the hour." Evelyn had thanked him. She always did, even when the world felt undeserving. Now, alone with the sound of her children breathing, she reached into her bag. Not the outer pocket, the hidden compartment. Her fingers closed around smooth metal. She pulled out a sleek, unmarked laptop, thin, almost anonymous. It wasn't the cracked one Daniel saw at home. This was the one he didn't know existed. The one that never connected to the home Wi-Fi. She placed it on her lap and opened it. The screen came to life instantly. Logins, dashboards, global maps. Data streamed in clean, organized lines, supply routes, financial summaries, secure alerts from different time zones, everything running, everything waiting. Not a single notification referred to Daniel. Evelyn exhaled slowly. Some people broke loudly. Evelyn had learned to break privately and rebuild with precision. She stared at the screen, but her mind drifted backward. A memory surfaced, sharp and unwanted. Her mother standing in a beautiful kitchen years ago, phone pressed to her ear, arguing with someone Evelyn never saw. Her mother's voice had been cold, clipped, successful, powerful. When the call ended, the house had been silent. Later that night, Evelyn overheard her father say, "You changed." Her mother replied, "No, you just finally saw me." The marriage hadn't survived the year. Another memory followed. A younger Evelyn sitting across from her mentor, an older woman who had built and lost and built again. They were alone in a quiet office, papers spread between them with numbers that didn't scare either of them. "Money reveals people," the woman had said calmly. "It never improves them. If you ever marry, don't put your entire self in their hands, not even if they're kind. Especially not if they need to feel bigger than you." Evelyn had taken that lesson and buried it deep. That was why she had stayed quiet. Why she had chosen Daniel without telling him the full truth. Why she had built walls between her power and her heart. She had believed love could exist without imbalance if she made herself smaller. She had been wrong. Evelyn's gaze shifted from the screen to her children. Lucas shifted in his sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Noah rolled onto his back, one hand twitching. Emma's face was peaceful now, her earlier fear finally giving way to rest. Evelyn reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not for leaving Daniel, not for surviving, but for choosing silence for so long that they had to witness its consequences." She straightened, her spine aligned, her breathing slowed. The woman who had stood on the roadside soaked in mud was gone. In her place sat someone older, sharper, awake. Evelyn's fingers moved across the keyboard. She logged into secure channels, confirmed that the Hale Trust transfer shown as validated in Thomas Reed's call was reflected across her accounts, and set temporary internal safeguards, nothing that touched Daniel, nothing dramatic, just security. Then she opened a contact list. At the top was a name she had not used in years, under a group labeled Legal Priority: Marissa Cole, Family and Civil. A specialist she had once quietly advised from the shadows as Evelyn Hale, when other women needed protection and didn't know where to start. Evelyn hovered her finger over the contact. Outside, a car passed by on the highway, its headlights briefly slicing through the thin curtains before disappearing into the dark. Inside the room, the children slept on, unaware that their mother was no longer waiting for answers. She clicked the contact. A secure email window opened. Evelyn began to type, "Marissa, it's Evelyn. I need an emergency consultation. Domestic abandonment with minors, last night, gas station. Likely video evidence. I am ready to use my name." She hit send. Then, with a smaller, older phone, the second phone from her drawer, she left a short, precise voicemail on Marissa's encrypted line. "Marissa, it's Evelyn Hale. I've stayed quiet for years. I can't anymore. Call me as soon as you're able." She ended the call. Somewhere across the city, in a dark apartment, another phone began to ring and buzz, this time not hers. Because the next voice Evelyn spoke to would not ask what happened. It would ask what she wanted to do about it. The door closed with a soft click that sounded final. 2 days had passed since the roadside. 2 days of motel coffee, gentle explanations to 3 10-year-olds, and quiet logistics changing the kids' school absence notes from "family emergency" to "we're safe now." Now, Evelyn sat at the center of a narrow conference table in a quiet office that felt deliberately unremarkable. White walls, neutral carpet, no artwork, no signs of wealth. The kind of place designed so nothing distracted from decisions that change lives. Across from her sat Marissa Cole, the divorce and family attorney, early 40s, posture straight, expression controlled, eyes sharp with experience. Marissa wasn't dramatic. She was efficient, the kind of woman who didn't raise her voice because she never needed to. To Evelyn's right sat Thomas Reed, executor of the Hale Trust and longtime guardian of her financial anonymity. He was in his 60s, calm and precise, with the demeanor of someone who had guarded secrets longer than most people kept friendships. His job was simple: protect what Evelyn had built. At the far end of the room stood a man who had not yet spoken. The private investigator leaned quietly against the wall, hands folded, eyes observant. His name was Jordan Hayes, and his presence was subtle but heavy. He was there to prove what others would try to deny. Evelyn rested her hands on the table, fingers relaxed. Her face was composed. No anger, no sadness, only focus. Marissa slid a folder toward her. "Abandonment with minors," Marissa said calmly. "Documented location, time-stamped, multiple angles from the gas station's cameras. We'll file for emergency custody today. If you want to explore criminal charges," she added, "we can speak to the prosecutor's office. With this footage, they'll at least take a meeting." Evelyn shook her head once. "Not yet," she said. "I want the children safe, the divorce clean, and the noise as controlled as possible. If we escalate beyond that, it will be because they need it, not because I'm angry." Evelyn opened the folder without hesitation. Inside were printed stills from a security video Jordan had retrieved within hours of her call. Grainy but unmistakable. Daniel's car, the roadside edge of the gas station lot, the children stepping out, Evelyn standing between them and the road, and then another still. The splash of mud. Evelyn closed the folder gently. "Good," she said. Marissa nodded once. "Emergency custody first, then the divorce petition. He'll be served formally once we have the order in motion. He won't see this coming in its full shape. Thomas adjusted his glasses. The inheritance is fully validated, he said. All entities are now under your control, as we confirmed on the phone. We've already ring-fenced the holdings in a manner that keeps them clearly separate from your marital assets. He's not on a single document. Evelyn didn't look surprised. And Daniel? She asked, not with bitterness, just clarity. He has no legal claim to your companies or the trust, Thomas replied. The prenup and the trust structure hold. He may attempt to argue for a share, but the documents and timelines are not in his favor. Evelyn nodded, absorbing the information with quiet acceptance. There was no celebration in her expression, no relief, just order. Marissa leaned back slightly. Before we proceed further, I want to be clear. This will likely become public. Not because we want attention, but because abandonment cases with clear footage often attract it, especially once filings become part of the record. Evelyn met her eyes. My children's faces will push to have identifiable details limited, Marissa said. But the fact of what he did may still surface. Evelyn considered that for a moment, then nodded slowly. I won't hide what he chose. I just won't let them be used. The private investigator, Jordan, stepped forward for the first time. He placed another folder on the table, thicker than the first. Security footage from the gas station is secured, he said quietly. Original files, notarized copies, and chain of custody documentation. We have at least 3 angles, including the license plate. There's also internal audio from the clerk calling a taxi for you afterward. He opened the folder. Inside were phone records, metadata charts, timestamps, location pings. His phone, Jordan continued, was at the same locations as the other device, the one registered to Chloe, from late evenings through early mornings at least twice a week for the last 4 months. Evelyn's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. And finances, Jordan added, flipping another page. He's been diverting small but consistent amounts from the joint account to a separate account, then using that card for hotel stays, restaurants, and transfers that line up with his meetings with her. Nothing enormous individually, but the pattern is clear. Marissa nodded. That helps establish intent and misconduct. Evelyn closed her eyes for just a moment. She remembered Daniel complaining about money, about being underappreciated, about sacrifice. The lie had never been poverty. It had been entitlement. She opened her eyes again. Proceed, she said softly. The word landed with more weight than any anger. Marissa began organizing the documents, already planning next steps, slotting each piece of evidence into the right motion, the right affidavit. Thomas checked his watch, then looked back at Evelyn. There will be reactions, he said carefully. From him, from his employer, from people who only know one side of the story. I know, Evelyn replied. I'm not afraid of reactions. I'm afraid of staying where we were. She stood, smoothing the front of her coat. Jordan hesitated, then reached into his bag once more. There's one more thing, he said. He placed several photographs on the table. Daniel, laughing, sitting close to a woman at a cafe. Her face turned just enough to be recognizable now, her hand resting on his arm. Another image, Daniel and the same woman entering a small hotel lobby. The timestamps lined up with the phone data. The intimacy was unmistakable. Evelyn looked at the photos. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She simply stared at the images for a long moment, as if memorizing them not with pain, but with purpose. Marissa watched her carefully. Are you sure you're ready to carry this all the way through? It will be a process. Hearings, paperwork, statements. Evelyn slid the photos back into the folder. Yes, she said calmly. I've been ready longer than he knows. She picked up her bag. As she walked toward the door, Jordan asked quietly, Do you want him confronted directly? We can have someone approach him. Evelyn paused. No, she said. Let him stay comfortable a little longer. Let him believe nothing has changed. She opened the door. Behind her, plans were already moving, filings preparing, evidence aligning. Ahead of her, Daniel was still smiling at his phone, still unaware that every step he took was now being recorded, not by her anger, but by the system she'd put in place long before he ever called her dead weight. And very soon, comfort would become the most dangerous thing he had left. Because the next time Daniel laughed, it would be the last time he didn't know why. The first notification hit Daniel Carter's phone like a spark. He ignored it. 2 weeks had passed since the night on the roadside. Evelyn hadn't called. His lawyer hadn't yet reached him with anything he chose to take seriously. In his mind, it was a big fight, nothing more. She'd cool off. She always did. Daniel sat at his desk with an easy confidence he hadn't felt in years. His chair leaned back slightly. His coffee was still warm. His tie was loose in a way he believed made him look relaxed, important, irreplaceable. Across the desk sat Chloe, the woman who made him feel admired again. Early 30s, polished, sharp-eyed. To Daniel, she was excitement, validation, escape. She laughed at something he said, brushing her fingers lightly against his wrist. Then his phone buzzed again. Daniel glanced down. Another notification. Then another. Then another. The phone wouldn't stop. He frowned and picked it up, his screen filled with messages, missed calls, alerts. Group chats lighting up faster than he could read them. Some from colleagues, some from numbers he didn't immediately recognize. "What is that?" Chloe asked, her smile fading. Daniel opened one message at random. It was a link. He tapped it, his face drained of color. On the screen was a still image pulled from security footage. Grainy, but unmistakable. His car, the edge of the gas station lot, the roadside. His children stepping out. Below it, bold text was already spreading on social media and in local news snippets. Father abandons children on roadside after argument. Gas station footage leaked. Daniel's breath caught. "That's not," he started. The phone vibrated again. Another headline appeared in a different app. Camera shows men driving away. Leaving family behind. Chloe leaned closer, her eyes scanning the screen. Her body stiffened. "This is real?" she asked sharply. Daniel scrolled frantically. Comments were already pouring in. Thousands. Anger, shock, disbelief. Parents tagging each other. Advocacy pages sharing the clip as a warning. Someone had slowed the footage, zoomed in, replayed it with captions. Then came the second clip. The mud, water and dirt exploding across the frame. 3 small figures recoiling. A woman standing between them and the road. Chloe pulled her hand away from Daniel's arm, as if burned. "You said she was dramatic," Chloe said quietly. Her voice was no longer playful. "You said she made things up, that you were trapped." Daniel swallowed hard. "I didn't know there were cameras," he said. "This is being taken out of context. She's obviously..." He stopped. Even he heard how weak that sounded. Chloe stared at him. "You drove away," she said, "with your kids standing there." Daniel looked around. People were staring. Coworkers had stopped typing. Phones were out. Whispers spread through the open office like smoke. "Is that him? Oh my God. That's Daniel, right? The one from marketing?" Daniel stood up too fast, knocking his chair back. "It's a setup," he said, louder than necessary. "My wife is unstable. She's trying to ruin me because she doesn't want me happy." No one answered. Another notification popped up, this time from a legal news alert one of his colleagues had forwarded. Divorce and emergency custody filed in family court. Documents cite abandonment, with minors. Chloe's face hardened. "You said she was dependent on you," she said. "You said she couldn't manage without you. This doesn't look like a woman who can't manage." Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. A third alert followed. A parent advocacy account had posted a blurred version of the gas station footage with a caption. "If you recognize this man, he works somewhere. His employer should see this." Daniel's hands began to shake. "How is this public?" he muttered. "This isn't supposed to be public. This is evidence or something. They can't just..." Across the room, his manager stood up and walked quickly toward him. "Daniel," the man said, keeping his voice low but firm. "My office. Now." Chloe stepped back. "I can't be part of this," she said, already gathering her bag. "You told me you were trapped, that she didn't understand you. This isn't trapped. This is you." "Chloe, wait," Daniel said, panic rising. "You don't understand. This is just a bad angle. It's..." She looked at him one last time. "No," she said. "I understand perfectly." She walked away. Daniel followed his manager down the hallway, every step heavier than the last. Phones followed him, eyes followed him. His name was already being typed into search bars, not as a professional contact, but as a warning. Inside the manager's office, the door closed. The silence was thick. The manager turned his screen toward Daniel. The same footage, the same headlines. Alongside them, An internal email from Human Resources flagged urgent with the subject line, "Employee conduct and potential reputational risk." "This is serious," the manager said. "We've been notified of a pending court case in these videos. We're placing you on immediate leave while we investigate." Daniel nodded quickly, words tumbling. "I can explain. It's not what it looks like. She's using the courts. She's using money she doesn't even." He stopped. He remembered the executor's name from one of the articles. Hale Trust. Something twisted in his stomach. The manager didn't respond to his excuses. Outside the building, notifications continued to spread, shares multiplied, opinions hardened. Far away, in a quiet rented space Daniel had never bothered to learn the address of, Evelyn sat with her children, her phone face down beside her. She did not watch the footage. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what had been released and by whom. Jordan had sent a copy to Marissa. Marissa had attached it to emergency filings, and somewhere along the way, a blurred version had found its way into public hands. Not at Evelyn's request, but not against her wishes either. The truth was doing what it always did when given space. It was moving faster than lies. Back in the office, Daniel wiped his forehead. "When can I come back to work?" he asked nervously. The manager didn't answer right away. He reached for the phone on his desk instead. "Human Resources," he said into the receiver. "Yes, he's here. We need to finalize the suspension notice, effective immediately." Daniel didn't hear the rest, because the door was still closed. And for the first time, Daniel Carter understood something too late. Comfort disappears quietly, and consequences do not. The courtroom doors closed with a sharp sound that echoed through the room like a warning. Everyone fell silent. It had been several weeks since the motel, since the leaked video, since Daniel's suspension from work. The public noise had started to fade into the background. What remained was this room, this day, and the people who had authority to decide what happened next. Daniel stood stiffly beside his lawyer, his suit pressed but wrinkled at the shoulders, his face pale from nights without sleep. He kept adjusting his tie, then his cuffs, then his hands. Nothing felt right anymore. Across the room sat Evelyn. She wore no jewelry, no bright colors. Just a simple blouse and jacket, a calm expression, and steady posture. She sat beside Marissa, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes forward. The triplets were not present. This room was not for children. The judge entered. "All rise." Everyone stood. Everyone sat. The air felt heavy, tight, like the room itself was holding its breath. The judge nodded toward the screen. "Let's begin with the evidence submitted by petitioner's counsel," they said. The lights dimmed slightly. The footage began to play. First, the roadside at the edge of the gas station lot. Daniel's car stopped abruptly. The trunk opened. A suitcase hit the ground. Evelyn stepped out, placing herself in front of the children. The triplets stood close together, confused, frozen. The courtroom remained silent. Then came the second clip. The mud. The splash hit the screen violently, water and dirt exploding outward, the children flinching, Evelyn standing still, shielding them. Daniel's car sped away. The video ended. No one spoke. The judge raised a hand. "That will be enough," they said quietly. Daniel's face collapsed. He felt exposed and cornered, but even now he framed it as a terrible look, a mistake caught on camera, not as the night he shattered his children's trust. His jaw trembled. His eyes darted around the room, searching for something: sympathy, doubt, mercy. There was none. He turned slowly toward Evelyn. For the first time in years, he really looked at her, not as a tired wife, not as someone behind him, but as a stranger he no longer understood. Evelyn met his gaze calmly, then looked back to the judge. Marissa stood and addressed the court, outlining the abandonment, the emergency custody already granted temporarily, and the request to make it permanent. She spoke of the children's stability at school since moving, their therapy appointments, the absence of any attempt from Daniel to check on them beyond what his lawyer advised. Every word was precise, every claim supported with documents, timestamps, and reports. Then something shifted. The judge glanced at another file. "Mr. Reed," the judge said, "you may proceed regarding the financial disclosures." A man stood from the second row. Daniel frowned. Thomas Reed adjusted his glasses and stepped forward. His voice was calm, professional, unhurried. "The court should note," he said, "that Miss Evelyn Carter, born Evelyn Hale, holds assets that are independent, premarital, and verified through the Hale Trust. Daniel's head snapped up. Thomas continued. These assets were accumulated prior to the marriage, maintained separately, and protected through a prenuptial agreement signed by both parties. The consolidated valuation stands at approximately $10 billion. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Observers leaned forward. Lawyers exchanged looks. Even the judge paused. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. $10 billion? He turned fully toward Evelyn now, his eyes wide, confused, desperate. She did not react. This valuation is documented, Thomas added, and Mr. Daniel Carter has no legal ownership or management rights over these holdings. There is no evidence of his contribution or knowledge, and he is not listed as a beneficiary on the trust. Daniel's knees weakened slightly. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering urgently, but the lawyer didn't answer, eyes fixed on the judge's notes. Daniel looked back at Evelyn again, panic breaking through his voice. "Evelyn," he whispered, barely audible but still caught by the room's silence. "You never told me." She tilted her head slightly, her expression unchanged. "You never asked," she replied calmly. A few people shifted in their seats. The words were not cruel, they were factual. Daniel swallowed hard. "We can fix this," he said, his voice cracking. "We can start over. I didn't know. I didn't understand." "If I'd known," he stopped. The sentence revealed more than he intended. Evelyn stood slowly when Marissa touched her arm lightly, inviting her to speak if she chose. She faced the judge first, then turned to Daniel one last time. "You already chose," she said quietly. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. "I didn't leave you on the side of the road," she added, still calm. "You left us." The judge cleared their throat and picked up the ruling prepared after reviewing all filings, reports, and evidence. Daniel's heart pounded so loudly he could hear it. The judge began to read. Based on the evidence presented, including video documentation of the respondent's abandonment of the minor children, corroborating witness statements, financial records, and the stability demonstrated in the petitioner's current care. Daniel closed his eyes. This court grants the petitioner, Evelyn Carter, full legal and physical custody of the minor children. The respondent's contact with the children, if pursued in the future, will be subject to supervised visitation as deemed appropriate by the court and the children's therapists. Daniel's stomach dropped. The judge continued. Furthermore, the court finalizes the dissolution of marriage on grounds of abandonment and marital misconduct. The respondent will provide child support as calculated under statute, adjusted to his income, current or future, and any failure to do so will be enforced accordingly. The petitioner's separate estate and trust interests remain her sole property. The gavel did not fall yet, but the decision was already complete. Daniel gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. Across the room, Evelyn simply exhaled. Not in relief, just in acknowledgement. The judge lifted the gavel. When it came down, it sounded like the closing of a door on a life that no longer existed. The judge's gavel came down hard. The sound echoed through the courtroom like the final punctuation at the end of a sentence no one could rewrite. Daniel stood frozen as the words settled in divorce granted, full custody awarded to Evelyn, financial responsibility assigned to him within whatever income he might manage to keep. His lawyer leaned in to whisper something about appeal options and compliance, but Daniel didn't hear it. His ears rang. His mouth felt dry. Everything he thought he still had vanished in a few calm sentences, spoken by someone who did not know him and did not need to. Across the room, Evelyn stood quietly. She didn't smile. She didn't look relieved. She simply nodded once, as if confirming something she had already accepted long ago, that the moment he drove away from that gas station, their marriage ended. Today only made it official on paper. Daniel tried to catch her eye. She didn't look back. Days passed quickly after that, too quickly for Daniel. His temporary suspension from work became permanent. The HR email used the word terminated and cited reputational concerns in violation of conduct standards. Joint accounts were frozen by court order long enough to be divided fairly her share. Transferred out, his reduced by legal fees and obligations. Friends stopped answering messages. Invitations disappeared. The group chat that used to light up his phone went silent. When he posted a long defensive message online, the only responses were from strangers who had seen the video and didn't believe him. Even Chloe was gone. No goodbye. No argument, just a quiet block and unanswered calls. Absence was louder than confrontation. Daniel moved into a small, nearly empty apartment. Boxes sat unopened. The walls were bare. At night, he replayed moments in his head, the car, the roadside, the mud, but each time, the memory stopped just before he could change anything. Because he couldn't. Far away from him, life moved forward. Evelyn stood outside the courthouse holding a manila folder. Inside were official documents, custody orders, finalized divorce papers, legal confirmations about the Hale Trust and her assets. They felt heavier than they looked, not because of what they awarded her, but because of what they acknowledged. Reality. The triplets waited nearby, in a separate corridor where they hadn't had to hear the details. Lucas stood tall, trying to look strong. Noah bounced on his heels, his old nervous energy returning slowly. Emma held Evelyn's hand tightly, as if afraid that letting go might somehow undo everything that had just been decided. "Is it over?" Emma asked softly. Evelyn knelt in front of them. "Yes," she said, "it is." They didn't cheer, they didn't celebrate, they simply breathed. Later that day, Evelyn packed their few remaining things from the modest house they once shared. The landlord didn't ask questions when she ended the lease early. The car she used was still the same one Daniel had always thought they could barely afford. There was no rush, no drama, just quiet movement. As they drove, the road opened ahead wide, clear, filled with light, not leading to a palace, not leading to revenge, just forward. Evelyn glanced at the rearview mirror. The children were talking softly now. Normal things, school, food, a dog they wanted someday. Whether they could repaint their new room's walls. She listened, letting their voices settle her. For the first time in a long while, her shoulders relaxed. Power hadn't saved her. Dignity had. That night, in a new place that felt open and clean, a rented home in a safer neighborhood, chosen not to show off but to keep them steady, Evelyn unpacked slowly. She placed the cracked laptop on a shelf. Then, carefully, she set the sleek one beside it. Both belonged to her story. She tucked the gold ring back into its place not to hide it, but to remember why she never wore it. The engraving, built, not inherited, meant something different now. It wasn't just about her companies. It was about the life she was building with her children, free from someone who treated them as weight instead of worth. Later, when the children were asleep, Evelyn stepped outside alone. The air was cool, quiet. She looked up at the sky. Not because she was searching for answers, but because she no longer needed them from anyone else. She knew who she was, with or without a last name. Somewhere far behind her, Daniel sat alone in a dark room, scrolling through a phone that no longer buzzed. Every attempt to reach out, whether to old friends or strangers online, fell into silence or skepticism. And somewhere ahead, a life waited that didn't require explanation, apologies, or shrinking herself to keep someone else comfortable. Evelyn turned back inside. The mud had dried, the truth hadn't. And for the first time, she walked forward knowing she would never have to look back again, not for permission, not for validation, and not for him. I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. I'll see you in my next video.